So, hello friends, I, Ankita Datta, project lead for the Mask series at www.tellmeyourstory.biz, welcome you to the 14th episode of The Mask Factor. I'm privileged to have with us author and critic Dennis Broe this evening, and we are going to discuss a word, an era, a story, and the significance of them all. Let me begin by introducing Dennis. Dennis Bro's latest book is Diary of a Digital Plague Year: Coronavirus, Serial TV, and the Rise of the Streaming Services. He is also the author of Birth of the Binge, Serial TV and the End of Leisure. His TV series blog is Broe on the Global Television Beat. His radio commentary can be heard on his show Breaking Glass on Art District Radio in Paris and on Arts Express on the Pacifica Network in the US. He is also the author of two novels, Left of Eden about the Hollywood blacklist and Hello to Arms about the post-war buildup of the weapons industry. He is currently teaching in the master's program at the Ecole Supérieure de Journalisme. He is an arts critic and Paris correspondent for the Morning Star and for Crime on 40 and for Crime Time, People's World and Culture Matters, where he is an associate editor. He is also an expert on 40s Hollywood cinema, the crime film, art and culture of the Cold War, and the author of Film Noir, American Workers and Post-War Hollywood, Class, Crime and International Film Noir, Globalizing America's Dark Art, and Cold War Expressionism, Perverting the Politics of Perception, Bombast, Blacklists, and Blockades in the Post-War Art World. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you for that introduction. I got tired listening to it. Thank you.
No
Thanks
worries.
very much.
So, hope you and your loved ones are doing well in these tough times. I would like to start on a positive note, though, by asking you about a really heartwarming experience that you might have had, during this whole pandemic era.
Okay, I'll tell you I think it's not your usual heartwarming story, but to me it's heartwarming. And that was that in France here, we've had a lot of police repression. I don't know if you have that in India, but we've had a lot of police violence, and that became a topic in the summer, last summer, that I write about in my book, Diary of a Digital Plague Year, especially around the Black Lives Matter and around the protests. So what happened here around the Black Lives Matter protests was that the government had said you can't go out into the street because it's too dangerous for people to get together and oppose the government. You have to have your masks on, and you can't meet in any large group. Well, the demonstrators, when they opposed a measure that had made it illegal to film the police, all came out into the street at the same time. They were all safe. They all wore masks. They all social distanced, and they demonstrated against the measure, and they stopped it. That was a heartwarming experience.
Yes, absolutely. That is heartwarming, and that's I can say the spirit of unity. so,
Yep.
so talking on the same lines, I mean, do you think that the whole thing that has happened, I mean, this whole
By the way,
pandemic?
I just want to say I wrote about that in my book. And there's a whole sort of thing about questioning Enlightenment values, whether France really is an Enlightenment country any longer or just a repressive country. And it's those people in the street who are part of what still is the Enlightenment tradition, who are out in the street campaigning for their rights.
Yes, absolutely. So, talking on the same lines, like I was asking you, it would be my second question to you. Do you think that the whole thing that has happened, I mean, this whole pandemic, this might have some positive role to play as well? I mean, like for instance, I can say that we these days have become, quite compassionate towards nature, and we have been widely discussing how we have destroyed her ourselves. So, like on that note, do you think there has been something positive all over the world?
Well, yes. This is the thing. I think it's very sort of what we say dialectical. So I think it's positive and negative. And so you have these two different kinds of things. One is that the lockdown is a time for reflection. It's a time when people are able to sort of step back a little bit and say something and think about what do they want the world around them to look like. And also to say, well, it hasn't been going that well. We're destroying the planet as quickly as we can. We have drug pandemics. In a book, I call it quintuple pandemics that we're facing: inequality, climate change, and people want something different. And so so the pandemic was a time when people were thinking about this, and they started thinking about it seriously. Unfortunately, there's also people who don't really want to change anything. And for them, there's 5G and 6G, and then there'll be 7G and 8G. And so the time of reflection will unfortunately get ironed out. And instead of reflection, we will get internet efficiency, which is certainly not the same thing.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. This is something like new that this is something new that you have pointed out, that yes, absolutely, lockdown was a time of reflection, a lot of self introspection as well, I would say. So
And social introspection.
yes, absolutely.
What do you want your particular neighborhood to look like? What do you want the country to look like? And what do you want the world to look like?
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, one of the things that's really called for because of the coronavirus crisis is global cooperation. And it's so important now, especially when the world has to come together to stop global warming. I mean, we've just had, I live in Paris, but I'm from the US. Well, the story on the newspaper today, Libération, is 50 degrees Celsius temperatures in Canada. 50 degrees. So, and there was somewhere in the US last week where it was 55. So the world has to come together to be able to battle this. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but I think the US is the main impediment to the world coming together. And I think Joe Biden and his State Department is not helping at all. I think the idea of waging war on China and trying to up the war on China is the main thing stopping the world from coming together at this point, at this moment. And I think it's very, very dangerous. And it's particularly dangerous because the Democrats and the Republicans in the US don't think it's dangerous at all. And that makes it even more dangerous. But what happened at the G7, then what happened at the Chinese celebration of 100th anniversary is about increasing tensions at a time when tensions should be decreasing and when the world really needs to come together. And so we have all this insane duplication where China now is going to go to Mars instead of all the peoples of the earth coming together to support mutual projects. And Huawei is now this sort of criminal thing, when in fact its criminal sin is that it does it better and cheaper than the US. And if 5G can be done cheaper, why shouldn't it be done cheaper? It benefits everyone. It's less resources depleted for the world. And, it's just so insane, this kind of competition when this really should be a time of cooperation, and it must be if the planet is to survive.
Yes, absolutely. Like golden words, I would say, really. So, like coming to your book, I would say that there was also this Journal of the Plague here, which is a monumental work that was a record of the great, bubonic plague of London. So, coming to your book, we have discussed about novels, short stories, general essays, but you chose to let your thoughts, get portrayed worldwide in the form of a diary. So, on the lines of Defoe, somewhere. So, why so? I mean, why did you choose a completely different modus operandi, I would say?
Well, during the lockdown, I thought there was something in, and I'd never read Daniel Defoe's Journal of a Plague Year, which was the plague year was in London in 1665. Well, so I started reading Journal of a Plague Year, and then I started reading the newspapers, and they were matching 100%. And I was just stunned to see, wait a minute, how can this be so similar? What's going on here? Including a brilliant article by Arundhati Roy in the Financial Times. And, Defoe talks about, in his time, groups of workers who tried to leave the cities and who were everywhere shunned and told not to go near anyone. And they felt they were bands of robbers when in fact, all they were doing was trying to leave the high plague centers, And, we have similar things here. We have similar things in this time. And Arundhati Roy wrote about, poor people trying to leave the cities in India and being policed and herded and not being left, And then, of course, we have the opposite, which is we have the rich fleeing the cities for, for much wealthier and much safer, housing. And of course, this has become a big deal because now the latest part of the thing, which I didn't get to write about, but I'll be writing about soon, is the housing crisis that is been exacerbated, and housing bubble is being built by the fact that during the lockdown, the rich had nothing to spend their money on. So they saved their money, and now they're buying up all the houses and they're increasing the rent very quickly. So other people can't, one of the things the lockdown has done is really exasperated the difference, the gulf between rich and poor. And you have this incredible gulf, this incredible, distance, ditch, between those people who can afford to flee the cities, who maybe don't want to go back, who have gone to, the upper middle class in the U.S. went to Austin, Texas, or Miami. If you were from, if you were from the West Coast, you went to Austin, Texas. If you were from the East Coast, you went to Miami, and you bought houses there, and you bought a condo, and you rode the thing out, and then of course you have on the other side, you have people who can't afford to pay their rent and who are going to get evicted at the end of July. So can you hear me? Ankita, can you hear me? Oops. Hello, I think I may have lost you. Hello? Ankita? Ankita, can you hear me? Hello? Ankita?
Yes, sir.
Did you lose me?
No, mine was also going through disturbance. I think it would be a network problem.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I just wanted, so just to finish, just to summarize what I was saying, so that it gets, so that you hear it was, you have the very rich and the upper middle classes are moving out of the cities toward ever wealthier homes that they're commissioning. They're building homes like crazy also. On the other hand, you have the very poor in the US who are going to lose their homes after the end of July. So it's an incredible, these differences are really incredible between classes, between peoples, that have been exacerbated, as has so much since the coming of COVID and in the confinement year.
Absolutely, sir. I had heard of this term egalitarian curve while I was reading economics. I had economics. So there it was. And this class conflicts and all of this stretching of this egalitarian curve, I believe, yes, COVID helped that at some point or in some ways.
Yes, I think the important thing is that we not get lost in the fact that, of course, we will have one group that's saying, there was life before COVID, which was great. And now there's life after COVID, and it destroyed everything. It didn't. It exaggerated and exacerbated things, but it didn't. But it moved things in a direction that, or the way things were already going.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
It accelerated changes that were already happening. It did not create them. There was already, and economists were talking about it, an economic collapse coming before COVID.
But it helped actually to for us also to see the difference with our own eyes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, sir, you have the word digital mentioned in the title of your book. So, my question to you would be: could the society, go digital so quickly without this coronavirus? I mean, does the Diary of a Digital Plague Year consider the response of the second and third world countries, the underdeveloped nations, to COVID in comparison to the stronger nations?
Okay, so that's kind of two questions. So the first one, what's going on? How can things go digital so quickly after COVID? Well, my particular area is television, and television. I'm a television critic, and I also write about television economics. So what was going on and what got accelerated was what I call the rise of the streaming services. So things were moving online, and all of a sudden they got a huge lift forward. And what we saw just before COVID and just at the time was we saw these mergers. And with these mergers, we saw all kinds of telecommunications companies merging with streaming platforms. So you had AT&T and HBO Now. You had different studios merging. So you had essentially Disney buying Fox, the Fox production company, and you had another one, which is a cable company, Comcast, which had already bought NBC Universal, then also creating a streaming service called Peacock. So all of a sudden you have now 6 streaming services. And so one of the things, so they were already and they were going live. And then, the coronavirus and the lockdown came along and helped them. Because all of a sudden, this was their only income. Disney was losing money through its parks, which were not opening. It was losing money through its cruise ships, which were not sailing. And so all of a sudden, you have this big change, and no one knows yet exactly how big the change is going to be. Are people going to come back to the theaters? We don't know yet. But the streaming services are ready for everything to go digital so they can profit from it. And also, and as they do, they move toward overwhelming global film and television. The problem being, too, that global film and television is very often government not controlled but financed, which means it tends to be more social. It tends to be more political. It tends to more represent people. And the streaming services are really an attack against that, the US streaming services. So that's one part of the question. The second part has to do with the unequalness of this. So yes, so there's a thing of, of them trying to sort of overwhelm things and overwhelm other countries' resources. Now I'm here in France, and the French just kind of don't quite know what to do, because their film industry is very powerful. But here you have Time Warner saying, look, we're going to put all 17 of our films, we're going to open them in the theaters, yes, but we're going to put them on HBO Now at the same time, so you can just you can watch them either way, so it doesn't matter to us, which means they eliminate theater owners and theaters. Now I will say I dealt in this television shows. I dealt with a little bit with Latin America, with Colombia. There's a wonderful series called Green Frontiers. It's a Netflix series, but it's very, very good, by a great Colombian director. And otherwise, I deal mostly with Europe and mostly with the U.S. But I'm going to write about India this year, because there's two things that I really want to write about. One is I think it's called The White Tiger, that film, which is a sort of like, kind of Martin Scorsese's Casino in India. It's very, very interesting. And the other is a television series. You'll know the name. I have it on my thing and I just forgot it. It's called Navdad, something like that. It's an Amazon series, and it's about a sort of government official and his son, and the son is about to sort of do away with the official. Gosh, what's it called? 1 second, let me look at it. Let me look it up. Tandav, that's what it's called. Tandav.
Tandav. Saif Ali Khan is there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called Tandav, and that's really quite a series, actually. It comments almost directly on Modi and what's going on in India. And the opening, oh my God, I'm going to write about it in next week or so. The opening with you see the kind of roly-poly policemen who in Indian films and across the world are just nice guys, and they're having a nice meal, and they couldn't be funnier. And then they go and kill the leaders of this strike. And this is at the exact moment that the farmers are in Delhi. Yes. It's a moment where this was released. And so, of course, the government was very upset about it. So I think that bodes well. Now I'm a little, it's a little weird to me that these very political, really interesting films are on both Netflix and Amazon. I mean, I wish they were on Indian streaming services, but it was sort of welcome to be able to watch them, and I will definitely write about them.
That's I will not say maybe an honor, but then yes, it's an honor as well. I mean, there are both ways, negative and positive. So coming to the next question. So your publication is coming out at a time when the pandemic has become a part of general talk. So how have you mentally designed the books, or rather your diaries, reception worldwide? I mean, now that people know so much about the pandemic and have been discussing the varied aspects of this whole thing that is going on, how do you think it would be?
Well, the book has an interesting design to it. So it's got it's kind of a flashback. It's sort of it's kind of a flashback and also a modern time. So these, all of the different diary pieces are pieces that I wrote in lockdown last year, 2020. But there's an introduction for every piece, which I wrote in 2021, looking back on 2020. So that's and also the introduction is new and the conclusion is new. So they are all based on the contemporary formation, the exactly sort of up to date. And I felt it was really important to get the book out, as quickly as possible, so that we can learn the lessons of the lockdown and not forget them. But also, I mean, we've moved into different areas of inequality now. So now we're talking about, first of all, we're talking about the pandemic hitting the global South, which is not vaccinated. And then we're talking about the United States, Europe, and, North America and Canada, which is vaccinated. So, which is going to again accelerate, these sort of changes, So, I talk about all of these things as they start to emerge, and I think the book is very up to date. I tracked it's at least up to this much up to date. This last month in June, Warner Brothers got out of, AT&T got out of the streaming business because they didn't understand it. And they made a lot of mistakes. They still control it. Nobody, quote, knows that, but I put that in my book. They have the controlling interest, and they have the final say, as happened with the movie studios very much, who are controlled by Eastern money, by New York banking money after the Great Depression. So it's a very similar thing. But they now seem to have gotten out of it. And they have an interesting line, which is they have a new president, who's the president of the Discovery Channel. So now they're going to go back to more of a kind of a combined television streaming model. So their model, which the guy plucked from the Maltese Falcon, but it's also plucked from Shakespeare's The Tempest, is they call their streaming service the stuff dreams are made of. And that's a very famous moment at the end of the Maltese Falcon when Sam Spade grabs the Falcon and they say, "What? Well, why did people do this?" And he said, "Oh, it's the stuff dreams are made of." So the thing is, that's an interesting line, because subconsciously what that's saying is that our dreams are now no longer our own. Our dreams are made by Time Warner and Discovery. And that you should be pretty scared about.
So everywhere, everything is now part of this. I don't know. I'm too much interested maybe in 1984, but then yes, the Big Brother is always watching us.
Yes, that's true.
So let us. We have already been talking about the most interesting part of your diary, the streaming services and the changed countenances of these services. But what do you perceive of this change? I mean, I have a follow-up question with this. The screen time has increased all over the world and has become news, creating records and huge waves of debate subsequently, whether it's a positive change or a negative. So, but the problem finds no end, no means to an end either. So are we gradually heading towards something catastrophic? I mean, are we being led to some dark abyss of just data and content and the streaming? Because I don't believe this one thing to go back to the way it was before the pandemic. I mean, we have come way too longer.
Yes, that's true. We cannot. So we won't. Well, so okay. So Naomi Klein has a phrase which I coined. I think I used, which is, she talks about what she calls disaster capitalism. Capitalism profits when things are terrible, and it comes in and figures out how it can make money off of this. So I call this, on the one hand, we have digital disaster capitalism. So capitalism profiting from this moving online, because a lot of money can be saved if life moves online. The president of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, sort of smacked his lips. They asked him about, workers, and he said, well, you know what? When they go back, 40% of the workers don't need to be in our banks anymore. He's smacking his lips thinking about the savings on real estate. I mean, that's one thing. And then, of course, the streaming services and their power, which has to be global now, because a lot of them are in debt. Netflix just got out of debt recently, but the rest of them are all in debt. AT&T, which owns Time Warner, is I don't know, what is it, 74 million in debt, something like that. It's a huge number. All of these companies are based on a model of debt, and so they have to keep growing. Okay, so that's on the one side. On the other side, is the possibility that we will learn something from this. I call it a sort of virtual road ahead. It's possible there will be a virtual road ahead, that we will come together, that people will come together in this increased world. I mean, I'm an American in Lyon, talking to you in India, and we're sharing, some really interesting, we're sharing very interesting talk. Well, that's a good thing, Now, so that's a positive thing. It brings people together in a way they haven't been brought together before, and that's very positive. If we can move forward in a cooperative way from that, if the only thing that does is create surveillance mechanisms where people are now watching me on this service and they're going, oh, now we can match his words to his emotions, and that will allow us to create a better user profile in order to advertise to him. Okay, well, that doesn't helping anyone. Well, it's helping advertisers, but if it's you and I talking and we come to some more understanding and some more cooperation together, then perhaps we have a positive outlook here.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, that is there. Like you said earlier, that we need more cooperation and less competition. So
Yes.
yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
and there's an old Chinese saying, and I don't know the word for it, but the idea of the saying is that with every obstacle comes an opportunity.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, sir. So going to our next question, so we are already on the roads of internet. So somewhere internet is getting into the depths and taking over our actual social life and making it into a social media life. So what, as someone who is working extensively on this field, I mean films, television and all, would be your take, I mean, on the statement? What would be your take about this?
How our life is really actually changing our daily life because of
Like,
this. Um,
what would, I mean, what are the effects that we are having? I mean, that we are not having a social life anymore. We are only having social media life. I mean, we are meeting friends just to post on Facebook. That's a new thing. So
I know. Yes, that's true. And yes, and when we do meet, finally, we're taking pictures of each other, getting our selfies, and then posting, and then the meeting is over, and we go on to another one. You know,
yes,
there is that kind of fairly empty life, which social media kind of encourages, really. That's that thing of the, like, the end of reflection. So there is no reflection. There's only the power of the selfie. And that sort of, in a sense, that can sort of defeat anything. um, I mean, and there used to be a saying about Hollywood, which is Hollywood defeats thought, because the camera, once it moves and once it makes everything look pretty, thought seems to go out the window. But people are still thinking, and also they're being forced to think, because we can't go on like this. And not only can't we go on like this in terms of climate change, but we can't go on like this in terms of a consumer society. We can't keep wasting. There just aren't that many resources left on the earth to continue wasting them at this rate. So it's going to come down to, a real challenge around how we see these things. And, like it or not, the consumer society is going to come under heavier scrutiny, and things, are going to have to change, or I guess we're all for Mars, and most of us won't make it. Only Elon Musk. And there was a thing, Jeff Bezos wants to go, and there's already a petition to see if we can, so that to not allow Jeff Bezos to come back to Earth. So I'm in favor of that, actually. But anyway.
well, that's interesting. Do we not have Amazon anymore? Yes, absolutely. This was interesting. I mean, this talk was absolutely interesting to us. But to conclude the session today, I have a small request for you. If you have your book with you, could you please read to us like an extract from your work?
I will. Yes, I'm going to read. I'll read my section on 5G.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so here goes. Let's see. I can't share the screen, can I? Because if I can, I could let you see it as I'm reading it, but probably not. Right?
We don't know.
You don't
Actually.
have that. Okay, let's see. Okay, so all right, 1 second here. Okay, so this is called 5G. And I also reviewed this show called Biohackers, but I won't read that. And the headline says, "Technology rules. Is that a good thing?" Okay, so here's the piece. There seems to be no questioning the technological imperative. 5G will, when it is fully operative, increase download speeds such that general mobile phone internet activity will be 20 to 100 times faster. Thus, for example, greatly enhancing watching TV series on the go. 5G will also, its promoters claim, fulfill the promise of both artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things, interconnected smart homes, smart cars, and consumers served by smart farms and operated on by smart machines. Likewise, in genetics, the cracking of the DNA and RNA codes, which may enable current COVID-19 stimulators to allow the body to suppress the virus without a dangerous injection of COVID, may eventually lead to promoting a generalized immunity from many diseases. What could go wrong? Plenty, say 5G critics in France. Likewise, in the realm of genetic algorithms, the German series Biohackers equally sounds the alarm. I'm not going to read that, but it's a very interesting series, and season 2 is coming up soon. In the US and across Asia in particular, in China and South Korea, the answer to what can go wrong is nothing. In the US, the debate over 5G is only about how fast and efficient the service is. The criticism is that the Verizon Apple iPhone 12 and the AT&T Galaxy 5G rollout, even in the large cities, is only partial, 4 times rather than 20 times faster. China, meanwhile, leads the world in 5G patents and sees the technology as its way to climb out of the stigma of world's low-end manufacturer, throwing off the Made in China labeling to be replaced by the Huawei branding of assembled technology, this time made in Vietnam. In South Korea, the debate is on how soon 6G will arrive. Europe is behind in the race to 5G, though one of its 2 telecom companies, Ericsson, has now announced it's ready for a rollout. But not so fast. Across the continent, questions are being raised about the safety, the consumerist changes, planned obsolescence, and inequality the technology will effectuate, and about how 5G is part of the capitalist, profit-driven, productivist imperative that has so ravaged the planet. In Germany and Britain, angry citizens have pulled down towers. In France, especially with the rise of a progressive Green Party called EELV, the entire ethos of 5G is being questioned. The opening salvo against the technology was fired by the Green Party mayor of Grenoble, Eric Piolle, who questioned its supposed benefits. And he said, "With 5G, I can watch porn in HD on my elevator and know if I still have yogurt in my refrigerator." That's the way he described the new promised land that proponents claim the network will usher in. In return, the Rothschild banker turned president Emmanuel Macron, a prime promoter of neoliberal technology as the savior of French society, labeled the Greens Amish, who wanted to return to the era of the oil lamp. His fellow right-wing confreres warned of a green peril, using the Cold War overlay of red peril, and branded those questioning this imperative as Khmer Green, likening them in the digital realm to Cambodia's murderous Khmer Rouge. There's little doubt that the primary reason 5G, the star of the Christmas consumer push, and that's when I wrote this around Christmas, is being so thoroughly trumpeted is the profits it will reap, forecast to account for $668 billion globally in 6 years, and predicted, with the gain in the sale of mobile phones, with an enhanced gaming experience, and with more widespread virtual reality headsets, to account for 5% of global GDP this year. That's a lot of money. Elements of the French left, though, including François Ruffin, a legislator and director of the film Merci Patron, or Thanks Boss, a kind of French Roger and Me, about France's richest bosses mercilessly closing factories, have suggested that this technological bounty is being asked to fill the void in lives that are increasingly despairing. Ruffin notes also how this techno-totalitarianism, what media critic Evgeny Mozarov calls solutionism, will amplify already existing inequalities. The technology may widen the gaps between the increasingly more plugged-in cities with 5G, the periphery around those cities with 4G, and the country's rural areas with no G, thus in France exacerbating what is termed the territorial fracture in what in the US might be called the red-blue dichotomy. Echoing Mozarov, Ruffin points out this kind of thinking leads not to, for example, regulating agribusiness to produce healthier, more eco-friendly food, but to supplying more intelligent forks. In Catholic France, 5G is breathlessly talked about, Ruffin says, as the second coming of the Holy Spirit, illuminating our smartphones in the way the first coming descended on the apostles at Pentecost. In the holy light of such a miracle, the telecom industry shakes off the shackles of any sense of being a public good and instead, regulation becomes only about how market competition can be promoted. France has always been suspicious of consumer miracles, while its leading thinkers have often, which is leading thinkers have often seen as foisted on it by American capitalism and its drive for global hegemony. Witness Godard's Two or Three Things I Know About Her and Weekend, and the films of Jacques Tati, Playtime, Mr. Hulot's Holiday, and their unfolding of a critique of a French society being remade from without. The debate here is raising important questions that are given short shrift in the rest of the world. Europe is simply being asked to conform and told that if it does not, it will be left out of a mainspring of the global economy, with its devices unable to catch up or be plugged into the global flow. Studies indicate that the digital economy emits 4% of greenhouse gas, a number that is predicted to double in 5 years, which 5 and 6G will accelerate. The Green Party labels 5G an enervore, that is, energy gorging, noting that mobile phone use already accounts for 2% of electric use in France. The introduction of this speedier technology is designed to increase costs not only of a monthly mobile bill as more data is accessed and downloaded, but also necessitating replacing existing mobile phones with 5G-ready equipment, phones which are now already on the average replaced every 18 months to 2 years. Eventually, the technology with increased pixelation for faster and clearer viewing will be a part of computers and televisions, and like the changeovers in television sets from analog to digital, will require a whole-scale worldwide replacement. The ecological question also involves not only the global waste in disposing of the used devices, which is estimated to reach 2 million tons, but also in their creation, with 70 kilos or 154 pounds of raw materials, including rare metals, necessary for the assembling of one of these super devices. These rare metals, which emit radiation, are strip mined in the south of China, where production is still largely private and loosely regulated. Elsewhere, 80% of the cobalt and tantalum needed for assembly comes from the east of the Republic of Congo, a war-torn area where 40,000 children work in the mining zones. Consumer enhancement of course with the tech companies go hand in hand with consumer surveillance. And 5G increases the drive to a global data center where billions of data packages will be available to publicity and advertising agencies for use in instantaneously molding and soliciting user taste, depending on the content of individual cell phones and the store any consumer passes, or more creepily, any impulses they have. By 2025, it is predicted that 75 billion objects will be interconnected, all transmitting user data, so that the refrigerator that is telling you to buy more yogurt is also spying on you. The internet highway becomes a spyway. The implementation of 5G is also wasteful. Huawei is clearly the global leader in cheap and efficient 5G construction. A mobile phone is made up of a complex of 250,000 inventions and patents. In 2020, the Chinese lead the world with 34 cell phone patents, followed by South Korea and Europe, with the US a distant fourth. Yet, in labeling the Chinese company a security risk, when in fact the real threat is that it's a more skillful competitor, and forcing its allies to boycott the company as well, installation of 5G will be more costly, with companies required to duplicate already established efforts. Finally, there is the question of safety. There has been no comprehensive government study on the effects of the increased sonic waves on the human body. Private corporate studies, which are not required to be made public, all negate this possibility, while public studies suggest there may be some danger. The U.S. National Toxicology Program found evidence of cancer tumors in rats exposed to high frequencies, and in Italy, the Ramazzini Institute warned there were potential carcinogens in radio frequencies. The French government has commissioned a thoroughgoing study, the results to be reported in spring 2021. The newspaper of record Le Monde and 70 legislators have asked for a moratorium until the findings are revealed. But Macron's Minister of Finance, Bruno Le Maire, wants to hasten 5G installation, warning that a delay would contribute to France losing its digital sovereignty. Last paragraph. The corporate sector sees 5G as simply an economic issue, with the question being when and how, not why. The Greens and the French left see 5G in the way it will change French life, perhaps increasing what the French philosopher Gilles Deleuze called societies of control, as a social and ecological issue, and a place where the overwhelming drive to more and faster, which has so devastated the planet, must be questioned. on the continental, national, and individual level, to not have 5G means to drop out of the digital flow, with capital arguing, as Theodor Adorno warned in the mid-20th century, that the worst of all conditions is to be left behind. What a bleak future indeed, without porn on our elevators and without knowing if we need another yogurt in our refrigerator.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. That was wonderful, actually. A lot of information stuffed together. So it was great to hear.
Perhaps too much.
No, but it was great hearing. I mean, we don't really always search these up, or these don't come to us like that. So absolutely. So thank you, sir. At Mask Factor, we do discuss new perspectives in each episode. So I would thank you. Thanks a lot, Dennis. Thank you for this very informative interaction and this wonderful book reading, and also for your time this evening here and afternoon there. So thank you once again. And to everyone out there, let me put a reminder. Tell Me Your Story calls for submissions on Mask, and the last date is the 20th of July, so hurry up. So till then, let us all try to stay well. Let us try to stay safe, and though distanced, let us try to stay together. Like you said, let's be cooperative and not competitive. So yeah, good night.
Thank you, Ankita. And I just want to say the book will be available on Monday to buy.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, sir.